Here's Johnny.
I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord. I'm walking here. I'm walking here.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Welcome to Box Office Pulp, the only podcast with movies, madness,
And Moxie.
hey. And this is a mini-bop, and for this mini-bop, I'm Mike,
And I am James.
and we are here to discuss Byzantium.
Not Byzantine, as I'm constantly tempted to call it.
Byzantine sounds like a food mineral of some kind.
It's John Constantine's looser cousin.
He hunts just werewolves. That's it. Just werewolves.
No, he hunts like were-panthers.
Were-panthers sound awesome, though. Panthers are so much cooler. Panthers are so much cooler than wolves.
I do agree there. He'd kind of hunt like were-deer.
Oh, were-dicks? You know, the little tiny deer?
That's a horrifying notion.
That's a thing. They're just little tiny deer. They're called dicks.
I think we're going into full John Landis territory with this.
Anyway, Byzantium. By Interview with the Vampire's own Neil Jordan. This is
And not John Landis.
Yes. Though there is sequel possibilities. Or just Nazis show up and it goes crazy. They could do prequels. There is a vampire film.
It's entirely possible Eleanor and Clara battled Nazis at some point.
I want to see
Their quest for justice.
I want to see Gemma Arterton as Clara battle Nazis at some point so badly.
The fucking sledgehammer. Clara, she-wolf of the SS.
So anyway, Byzantium, the feminist vampire film that you don't know is feminist until about, I would say a good 75% of the way in.
Surprise feminism is always the best feminism.
Yeah.
It's like you're watching a vampire movie, then all of a sudden, boom, you learn something.
So I had been looking forward to this movie for super long time. Just first when it was just announced Neil Jordan was making a vampire film, and then when the cast started getting announced and I started hearing more about it, and then I think you only heard about it through me, right?
Yeah, I did not know a single thing about this movie whenever I first watched it, other than it was a vampire movie and people said it was good. For some reason, I thought it was going to be all medieval, just because of the name.
I thought it was going to be very noirish because of the poster.
That's a beautiful noirish fucking poster.
Yeah, the poster's kind of misleading when you consider the movie, where it's at a drowsy coastal town in Ireland.
And Banshee shows up.
The palest dude in the world.
He's like some kind of creature from Irish folklore. He's like a will-o-wisp.
Just bleeding everywhere. So Byzantium is a vampire film, but with a very different kind of vampire mythology around it. And the vampirism in the film isn't really. I'll compare it to Interview with the Vampire just because he directed that too. Which is vampirism is the kind of the forefront of the film, and it's about immortality and things. Where Byzantium is pretty much just a mother-daughter story, and about kind of a patriarchal society, and the vampire stuff is more just mythology and window dressing to the whole thing.
It's about two hardworking women trying to make it in a white man's world.
And the lead character may not be a bad person, you're not really sure.
Yeah, it's a very morally ambiguous film.
Yeah, I mean, Clara she's kind of a mother wolf protecting her daughter, but is also just seems to be bad. Just seems to be a genuinely bad human being, even before she became not a human being.
Yeah, she's kind of the most stereotypically vampirific character in the movie. And this movie's portrayal of vampires, I would have to say my least favorite interpretation of vampires has always been the interpretations where there's nothing monstrous about them at all. They're just people who live a long time.
Yeah.
But this and Interview with a Vampire are two movies that have always gotten it right for me. Yeah, 'cause even though it's my least favorite type of vampire interpretation, I've always been very fascinated with the idea of immortal characters. The idea that no matter how long you live, you're still going to be the exact same person you are, and you're probably just going to make the exact same mistakes over and over again, just in new settings.
Yeah. And, immortality in fiction is always used as kind of, because the character arc you can give someone who's immortal is just different than just a normal person. Because they experience such radical different change in cultures and et cetera. So it's fascinating to see how they change, but what remains the same. So with Clara, she's just always a prostitute. She's just a sex worker in some way.
And it's made very clear that she doesn't have to do this and could do many other things, but that's just what she falls back on.
Yeah. Even though she was forced into it originally.
And Eleanor, they do something very interesting with the way Eleanor hunts her prey, which is something I can't believe no other story's ever done. Which is, she just visits people when she's young and tells them that she's a vampire. Then 80 years later, she visits them again, and as soon as they see her, they know, oh shit, she was telling the truth. And they just offer themselves to her. She's this angel of death.
Yeah. Unlike Clara, who just pretty much loves to feed. Like how excited she is when she first gets on that beach after leaving the island. Starts tearing into people. While Eleanor just kills just to survive.
Yeah, since you brought up I'd say about 1/3 of this movie is told via flashback. And it's an amazing shift in tone the movie pulls off, where you go from this modern setting that feels almost less like a vampire movie as much as it is like a family drama and a teenage love story. Then you shift to the flashbacks where it's just like, it just becomes a Mike Mignola story.
The movie flashes back to a vampire movie. Occasionally.
And not just a vampire movie, but a fucking OG mythological vampire movie.
Let's talk about the mythology of the vampires in this universe.
The pointed nails of justice.
Vampires, biting or drinking a vampire blood doesn't turn you. They take you to this island. This mysterious, strange island.
That may or may not be the island from Lost.
We don't know. There may have been a polar bear, but you can only find it if you have a map. And there's a little hole you go into, and there's like this strange room where you meet something that I'm so fucking jealous, a name I'm so jealous I didn't think of, a being called the Nameless Saint.
That is amazing.
It's so genius. Who appears as you and kills you.
But not before speaking a riddle.
That is also never explained. Whatever it is just tells you a riddle. You don't have to answer it or anything. It just tells you it. And then all the water on the island becomes blood. And then you walk out and you're a vampire.
And then you become a superhero.
Also, I love the sound design whenever they're on the island with the birds flapping around. It reminded me very much of The Exorcist, which is throwing off your senses just to make the place seem weird.
Yeah, those scenes are very visceral and disturbing. I'm a big fan of, I'm not sure what exactly you'd call it, but it's a sort of H.P. Lovecraft style idea of like going to this place that's beyond time.
Yeah.
Just going beyond the mortal realm and finding these places where the laws of the universe don't apply, and you see things that are unknowable, and those things change you.
And they never go into what the Nameless Saint is, where it comes from, what the island is, which just paints the movie as more interesting.
Yeah, it always feels like there's this whole other story that's waiting to be told. You're seeing this brief little snippet of this greater universe.
Yeah. So I love just these two characters just in this big open mythology. The pointed nails of justice.
Yeah, that's the part of that movie. I think it's not even until the third act it springs it on you that, vampires are sort of superheroes in this universe.
I want to see a movie about them. What do they do?
There's this patriarchal society of male vampires who help the helpless and take out those who would do harm to the world, but they're also assholes and need to be taken down.
Which goes back into the morally ambiguous nature of most of the characters in the movie.
Like, there's essentially a Catholic church of vampires out there.
Pretty much. With the greatest name ever.
Yeah, there's a great build-up to that reveal, because throughout the movie, as Eleanor and Claire leave this bloody trail of bodies behind them, they keep having these cutaways to these two cops these two people who seem to be cops that are investigating their crime scenes, which I really love because it's like some weird French movie.
Yeah.
Where it just keeps cutting back to these silent scenes of investigators staring at bodies. And eventually it's revealed in the third act that they're being pursued by the pointed nails of justice.
The Vampire Brotherhood.
We want to stop them, not because they're killing, but because they're women who are vampires, and vampirism is a strictly no girls allowed club.
Yeah, well, the thing was that no women can create. Like, they were like, all right, Clara, you can't be part of the Brotherhood because you're not a dude, but, we'll let you live because it would be unjust to kill you.
Because you're a woman.
But then she, turns Eleanor into a vampire, and that's what sets them off.
So that was an interesting idea of a patriarchal group removing a woman's right to create.
Yeah.
It's like, women are the only thing that can create, so now that the tables are turned, we're going to see how they like it.
And I love how it's both blatant and you can completely miss it at the same time.
Yeah, it's not like they turn to the camera and say, well, this is about the abortion debate. I also love how the flashbacks are told in kind of a disjointed way that's not told entirely in sequence. Yeah, and you see a lot of it from Clara's point of view and a lot of it from Eleanor's.
Yeah, the structure's very kind of arresting. As it goes on, it makes a lot more sense, but at first it's very kind of offsetting.
And whereas Clara's flashbacks are told in this very Victorian vampire movie style, Eleanor's play out almost like a ghost story.
Yeah.
Like her mother visiting her late at night and her just knowing that there's something otherworldly about her. And eventually that leads into her converting her as a vampire. This movie's a great mishmash of all these different conflicting horror tropes that all meld together into one cohesive whole. It's like the scenes set in present day have a very noirish feel to them. And also, there are scenes where it almost feels like you're watching like a teen romance movie.
Yeah.
Like Ryan Gosling's going to appear in the rain and talk about how much he loves Jennifer.
With just Cal Landry Jones just, besides paling all over the place, just being a nice guy. But there's not a lot to his character other than, he's just kind of a kind dude.
And he's dying.
He's dying, of course.
He's a manic pixie dream guy.
He just bleeds all over the place.
I like the idea of a young vampire falling in love with a hemophiliac. Theirs is a forbidden love.
And just getting way too excited about it. Oh, God.
By the way, how amazing is Saoirse Ronan in this movie?
So good.
I've become a really big fan of hers ever since seeing her in Hannah a couple of years ago, which was a really great, also feminist movie that not a lot of people went to see. There's something very otherworldly about her. She's almost like a character from a fantasy story, like she's in Alice in Wonderland or something.
Yeah, she plays someone who's very old, but is kind of being forced to be stuck in this very young frame of mind because of her mother. And I think it also works cool against Archerton, who's very arch in the movie.
Just Wonder Womaning all over the place.
So these kind of Eleanor feels like she's out of this ghost story, and then Clara is this vampire goddess just murdering everybody.
It is and unlike Eleanor, doesn't seem like she's out of place. Clara's this very alpha female, aggressive modern chick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Eleanor just seems like she's someone you'd see in an old photograph.
Which I think ends up working well with the ending, which we'll get to. But one of the things I actually kind of don't really like that much about the movie actually has to do with Eleanor, which is just kind of a repetitive nature to her character kind of throughout the movie. But just kind of talking about her story a little bit over again. They kind of repeat it maybe just a couple too many times, or just where it kind of turns the character very close to whiny.
I don't know. I didn't really have a problem with that.
At least that's how I felt.
I kind of like the idea, the duality between Eleanor and Clara, where everything Clara says is a complete lie. Meanwhile, Eleanor can only tell the truth, so she's just constantly telling people that she's a vampire. So of course everyone thinks that Eleanor is a compulsive liar. It's like, I've never seen that played in this kind of story where one of the characters is just completely honest about what they are. Because in real life, nobody would ever fucking believe that shit.
Yeah. And I like the Eleanor, not being able to move on from the past while Clara ignores it, but really Clara is the one who's holding on to the past while Eleanor's moving past the past. There's a lot going on with each character instead of just kind of being normal mortal chicks who are having like mother-daughter issues back and forth. Like they got their own thing going on completely independent of one another.
Yes, it's the mark of a great horror story whenever the supernatural aspects could be exercised from the story completely and you would still have a great character piece.
Yeah. Like if you just removed the vampire stuff and just had, Clara killed a John at some point is now on the run, it works just as well. Granted, we don't have Gemma Archer jumping on a car and going off fucking super strength on it, but a dude taking out a giant sword. But
I love how fucking bananas that movie gets in the third act. It's like the movie is so slow and foreboding and character driven. In the third act, it just becomes a superhero movie. Like it just turns into Blade for 15 minutes.
Fucking Thor Lindhart, that guy. I love how he casted that guy in that role.
I hate talking women.
Like I've always been a fan of his because he has this weird he looks terrifying, but he has this weird jolly vibe about him with everything that he says, but looks terrifying. So I never know what to think in any of his roles.
He's like the evil Ron Perlman.
It's like he looks like a bad guy, but he seems to be having fun with everything that he's saying, so I don't know.
He's a happy villain. Just the best kind. Makes evil look good.
Also, again, this movie has flashback villain and then present day villain.
I like how the villain of the flashbacks is just a sailor dying of syphilis.
Ruthven's just an asshole.
I was very fascinated by that his sailing companion would still want to grant him eternal life after he completely screwed him over.
I was curious of where that was going.
I think it was just after the hot chick.
Probably.
As many sailors are. I do like how there was a nautical adventure in this movie. With an accursed voyage. My favorite horror trope.
There was a whole prose story that went down at one point.
A prose story that just reads like it was written in the 1800s by candlelight. In an Italian villa.
I like how they even talk about Eleanor's writing it at some point. As if it's just they're just reading some kind of, they're reading Mary Shelley or something.
Yeah, it gets almost meta at that point.
The movie's actually kind of has some weird meta moments, which I love. Also, it has the great montage of, Clara picking up hookers.
I know, Clara becoming the best pimp in the world.
Sexy vampire lady pimp.
Just carrying that sad man around.
Oh, no.
Being the saddest madam of a whorehouse ever. Why are all these girls in my house? I've lost control of everything.
I felt so bad when he died.
I did too. I was like, you want there to be a happy ending for that guy? He just wants to take care of his girls.
He doesn't want to rough anybody up, so that's just too far. I like that little coastal, vacation town has this massive brothel now.
But Clara would go to Amity, a whorehouse. She corrupts everything with her influence.
I do love that Claire's vampire thing is like, well, she was a whore a lot, so she's fucking really good at running brothels. She knows how to do that shit.
She's been running brothels for a century.
Let me ask you a question about the ending real quick, see what your thoughts were. Did you feel that Clara letting Eleanor go off kind of right after the whole after Ruthven revealed that he's, a good guy, which I liked, which was Ruthven just revealing that this entire time they've been chasing him for, centuries. He was planning to do this the entire time.
He was undercover. Undercover vamp.
Which, once again, I want to see that movie.
That guy getting in too deep.
I want to see the undercover side story. But how did you feel about Clara just, like, well, I'm going to go off with Ruthven now. You go have fun with your boyfriend.
I felt that was something that at that point was earned. I think Clara knowing that she had to let Eleanor go was something that had been in the back of her head since before the events of the movie.
Yeah.
I think the reason she murderously resisted it in the third act was just because of how much she really knew it was time. And it just took those last events to really, break her out of that mindset once and for all.
Yeah.
I also think just the idea of having a companion helped.
Yeah, I mean, she really just was holding on to Eleanor for the sake of having somebody. And Ruthven also likes killing people.
I love how genuinely touching they were able to make that moment between these two 100-year-old murderous vampires.
Going off to have adventures. And then Callum Landry Jones becoming a vampire.
The palest vampire of them all.
Just asking people politely whether or not he can please drink their blood.
Yeah, I've never seen someone being turned into a vampire treated so optimistically.
Which is funny considering, like, okay, we know he went in that hole and then was brutally murdered by a demon.
Who asked him a question? As the Banshee.
Harwin Shu in Days of Future Past. Kills him.
It's like he's gonna come home to his mom and dad with a thirst for blood.
And, one thing I was kind of unsure of, only because I would find this a weird trope that happens nowadays, which is Eleanor going to school.
I think she was bored.
Yeah, I think it fit her character well. Not like a Twilight thing where he goes to school for no apparent reason. It seemed to fit Eleanor well. She just wanted to go to school to experience what schooling is like right now.
And to be fair, I don't think it's not like you see her in math class or anything. I think she may have just been taking the one class she was in.
Well, she liked music. How weird is it to just have someone walk into a restaurant and start playing the piano?
It is very unnerving.
I don't know why that disturbed me so much. As did Cal Landry Jones becoming a stalker briefly.
World's most pale stalker.
That scene where he kisses her forehead, like, the difference in skin tone creeped me out.
And Saoirse Ronan is a pale chick.
It's like he was translucent.
It's like white with eggshell white.
He wasn't that pale in X-Men.
I think they used color correction for that. And that was somebody's job to make that kid look human-colored.
Also, we can't go without mentioning this. Gemma Arterton's nipple briefly.
Yes. The surprise cameo of the movie.
In a horrifying scene. So I don't know what to feel.
But God knows I'll get the Blu-ray and check it out. Zoomed into 400%.
How much, like, the only real villain of the movie is Ruthven, who is almost, like, bizarrely evil. Where he takes a young girl he finds on a beach and turns her into a prostitute for no reason. And then leaves for several years.
Again, he's like a villain out of some Victorian Charles Dickens novel.
Like, I mean, yeah, he raped her, but he could have done that anywhere.
He liked the idea of setting up franchises. He had ladies all over the world.
I want to have sex with you again in 20 years, so stay here, and I'll be back. Let me ask you a question. Whenever you see people cough uncontrollably in film, particularly when there's coughing up blood, do you ever get, like weird, like, tickles in your esophagus?
I don't, but all the nerve endings in my throat died years ago.
Why?
I'm not going to go into that in this podcast.
Okay.
Red Rocket.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
Gemma Arterton. And her curves that kill.
Good actress, too. There's that.
She's so elegant.
But Byzantium.
Yes, beautiful movie. Excellent screenplay.
Oh, it is a beautiful movie. The score is really good, too.
Oh, yeah, just an all-around, like, the kind of horror movie that only seems to come around, like, a couple of times a decade.
And it really wasn't made for much at all, but visually is stunning.
Yeah, the classy horror movie is a subgenre that doesn't get a lot of entries in this day and age.
No.
Like the last movie like this I can think of is Johnston's Wolfman.
Yeah. So I think we just named the last two in the last decade. And weird, like, clashing of classy styles where you're in a strip club suddenly, and then you're in a mall, and then suddenly you're in the Irish countryside. And there's sweeping shots, and it's like a fishing village, and Hal Landry Jones is there.
He uses his sonic powers.
As a waiter, breaks plates.
Just bleeds all over the customers. Oh, I'm sorry.
And even, like, color tone-wise, I thought was interesting. Wherever, like, they're on the beach, it's all very, like, drawn out. But then you're inside, like, the college, and it's very warm and very modern-looking.
I'm a big fan of horror movies that aren't afraid to be colorful.
Super colorful.
If you look at movies like American Werewolf and London, movies like that have just explosions of color, and that can often make things even more horrifying.
Yeah, Jordan was great on that with Interview with the Vampire, where everything just pops of bright gold everywhere, and it feels like you're watching a play or something. It's just on these beautiful sets. I like most things which are just kind of like, well, our color is going to be red, which is going to be terrifying and scary.
Grr, look at all these muted colors.
I think Claire is.
There's no teal in this world.
I think Claire is in the red dress for that one coughing scene, and that's it. Though by the way, her peeking through the window at the orphanage creeps me the fuck out still, whenever I think about it. It's like something out of some kind of weird 80s horror film. I don't know what
it's like a Salem's Lot moment.
Yeah. Like, how did she even get up there?
There's just something so viscerally disturbing about that shot, because the window's just up high enough so that there's no natural way she could be up that high.
Just kind of shooting it from Eleanor's point of view. It's weird. But, actually, the kind of subtext of the movie again. How were you expecting that?
No.
Yeah. I was just expecting,
the movie just springs that on you halfway through.
Like, I was expecting a pretty straightforward horror film with, like, judging from the trailer, I was like, okay, there's gonna be some cool, like, character stuff in here, and Darren Arthur's stripping, so that's cool. Vampires, cool. Then the flashback starts, and you know what the fuck's going on, because that first flashback has no context at all. And at that point, you're not even really sure you don't even know Clara is Eleanor's mother, really. Other than, like, a couple little hints. Hell, the first time you see the chick that Ruthven, first time you see Clara, you don't even know that's Clara. It's just some chick. Like, it has a really strange structure. I believe it throws a lot of people off, and a lot of people who dislike the movie, I think, are thrown off by the structure of the flashbacks, which are just, and they become pretty straightforward after a while, but it doesn't force feed you info. You kind of have to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, the flashbacks are done very dream-like, like the first Eleanor flashbacks where she just sees herself, and you're not entirely sure if what you're watching is a flashback or just supposed to be some kind of mirror of something that may have happened at that location once.
And you haven't introduced the island as their mythology yet, so you're just seeing this thing happen, and then, and then you get to the scene where Eleanor's been raped by Ruthven, and Clara killing Ruthven, and you're still not really sure what's going on. Like, he's talking about that he's diseased, but you don't really understand, you don't know who he is or what he has.
Who is this strange sailor?
What fucked up is that revenge through passing a venereal disease?
Once again, very Victorian.
God damn it. But, it's pretty much that scene after Clara's become a vampire and is in the, what was that, like their Xavier mansion? Where Giant library or something.
That was, he built it from all the money he got from those hoes he was drinking out across the world. Off his franchises.
So when they're sitting Clara down, then it's like, oh, that's the point of the movie. Like, it just comes on so quickly. And then everything suddenly makes sense in hindsight.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a great movie to rewatch.
The way everything just comes together that came before, where you're re-examining it in a completely different light, almost immediately, without even having to rewatch it. It's really hard to do, but I don't know, it's just the way they play it out. It comes together, and at that point I was on board with the movie. I was liking what I was seeing, but it wasn't really anything special to me. For me personally, it was just kind of like, this is cool, but then I'll have to write home about, just kind of going. And then once the subtext of the movie was revealed and what was actually going on.
Once the pointed nails of justice appeared.
At that point, I was sold. And I ended up really loving the movie. More than I ever expected to. Yeah,
it's probably the best entry into the vampire genre. Easily since Let the Right One In. And actually I would say I enjoyed it better than that movie.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That did not have a Byzantium blade show up, which I think would have helped. The only thing that can kill a vampire.
Because once again, it just becomes a Hellboy story in the last 15 minutes.
No fucking, did it blow your head off when he opened the trunk and pulled out a giant sword?
Because this is happening now.
And it's a rental car, too, so... they rented a car, opened the trunk, put a giant sword in, closed the trunk, got in, and drove off.
It just becomes urban fantasy at that point.
Ruthven revealing, aha, I fooled you. I still love that. It's like there's so many reveals of all these big things happening in the movie that are just kind of in the peripheral or on the side, or...
Yeah, they never feel like shocking plot twists.
No. It's a lot of, smart exposition and just the way they built up the world. I can't really even compare it to anything else that pulled it off effortlessly like that. Because a lot of it shouldn't really work. I don't think.
Neil Jordan is...
the director directed this film.
I had a joke I was going to make and that just dropped away.
Whatever.
Well, it does help that Neil Jordan made that pact with Loki all those years ago, so... The entire Earth is doomed to Ragnarok, but we're going to get some really solid vampire movies out of it for a few years.
Hopefully a sequel to this, Clara on her further adventures fighting the pointed nails of justice.
I think it's all just Eleanor and that boy just living together in that sleepy town. Him paling even further.
Well, he's dead now, so it's no blood flowing. He always be tan like Richardson.
But yeah, Box Office Pulp recommends Byzantium.
Pretty much. If you weren't planning to give it a chance, definitely give it a chance, because...
Yeah, because that's a movie that does not seem to get a lot of love.
No, and not a lot of people know about it, and it's kind of swept under the rug, which is strange, because it got pretty great reviews and reception and all that when it played at festivals, but I think the fact that it's so different and unique just kind of throws people off. Also, it's feminist, which unfortunately...
The real F word.
Which unfortunately throws people off. And,
yeah, especially in the horror community.
And I love the idea of a feminist horror movie.
They're always the best ones.
Yeah, and we'll probably be doing all of them. Right? The episodes that me and you do.
Hey, we have a theme and we like to stick with it.
At least we mainly talked about vampirism and not feminism.
My favorite isms.
Anyway, this has been Box Office Pulp.
I've been James.
And I've been Mike.
And we have been the pointed nails of justice.
And like that, he's gone.
Ah, hello there. I didn't hear you come in. If we haven't met before, my name is Cody Elft. You may know me from such exciting podcasts as Box Office Pulp and Listopia, a 30-part series listing all of life's lists that need to be listed. You may also know me by the following: Flexo, Flexmex, Flex Killington, Flexo Cabana, Coco, or Ears. But you're not here to learn about my love of lists and nicknames. Instead, you've come to hear about the next dynamic podcast from the Pulp Podcast Network. I haven't personally listened to this new podcast, but as its producer, I am contractually obligated to inform you about how gosh darn fantastic it is. And boy is it. I can only assume it makes 4th of July fireworks in Washington, D.C. look like a cow's cud draped in a second grader's finger painting effort in comparison. But Cody, you ask, what is this truly epic podcast? And what is it about? I'm not exactly sure, but I can tell you this. In life, the great hero Hercules faced 12 labors. He fought the Nemean lion, the Lernaean hydra, the Cerberus, the hellhound of Hades. He stole the girdle from Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. He even traded barbs with an animated James Woods, and his sucker punched the mighty Thor in the face. But now, he faces a greater challenge than all of those tests combined into one giant ball of challenge. Now, Herc must face off against his most challenging foe in Pulp Podcast Network's thrilling new show. Coming soon to a speaker near you. We hope you enjoy Hercules versus the podcast.
Hercules possessed a strength the world had never seen.
Oh, Hercules, Hercules, Hercules. What's the word?
Hercules, deliver us from this curse.
Hercules.
Strongest man alive.
No man is superior to Hercules.
This has been a Flexco production.